How about some fantasy frights on this Halloween night?
Oh my gosh.
Big name has you spooked enough to sit him this week? What are you thinking, Fats?
Yeah, man. Terry McLaurin is a fade for me against Tre'Davious White and the Buffalo Bills, who've been so tough against wide receivers who split out wide. And, you know, we're seeing reports that Dwayne Haskins is taking first-team reps with Case Keenum still in concussion protocol. That scares me even more. I'd start the Bills' defense, not Terry McLaurin.
Yeah, it seems like he's kind of also fallen victim to the increase in the run game there and just not getting those targets anymore. All right, Akbar, what are you thinking?
Well, I know this is going to sound really weird, and some people may discount this idea of sitting my man Aaron Rodgers, but if you double check,
Rank, is that you?
Here it comes.
What happened?
No, did he say the same thing?
In the past.
It sounds like something
But
I would
double
say.
check what I'm saying here. The Chargers are very, very good against the defending the pass, and you look at Aaron Rodgers, especially on the road. It's not that great on the road. 4 touchdowns compared to 12 touchdowns at home. I think Aaron Rodgers is going to struggle against the Chargers on the road. So this is a guy I'd sit.
He's going to be at home in Carson.
Kind of, but
I mean, in a way.
Travel away. He's going to be far away from home.
He has to
There'll
get
be a lot
in the
of
plane.
Packers fans there, though.
There will be.
A lot.
I don't know if you guys heard it, but Akbar was trying to make a little discount.
Yeah, I know, and he stepped all over
my
it,
bad.
and then, oh man, it was
Right, what do you
supposed to
got?
be-
You're not supposed to, say brand names out loud. But let's talk about
didn't
another
say a
brand name that I'm going to put on the bench this week, and that's Carson Wentz. And he really just hasn't performed to a QB1 level this season, even though he is the QB, 15? He hasn't thrown for a lot of passing yards this year either. And now he's got a matchup against the Bears, who've actually been pretty good against the pass. They've struggled against the run recently because Akeem Hicks is on IR, so that's allowed them to give up a lot of production to the running backs. And of course, it's worth pointing out that Jordan Howard comes in a revenge game. Although, in all honesty, as a Bears fan, we did not want Jordan Howard to go, so you I got it. But you don't have to let him. Don't get mad at us, Jordan. We didn't want you to leave. We wanted you to stay.
Marcus, what are you looking at?
Odell Beckham Jr. It has not been a great season for him. He's got 4 games with 12 or fewer fantasy points, just 1 touchdown so far this season. And you see there on the screen, the Broncos have given up fewer than 12 fantasy points in 4 of the last 5 games. They've given up the fewest fantasy points overall per game to the wide receiver position. The Browns' offense is kind of a mess, and I'm really worried about OBJ this week.
But would you start Jarvis Landry in place of Odell Beckham Jr.? That a question we will answer a bit later in Plug and Play.
Plug and
Not
play.
yet.
Not yet.
That's on me. That's my fault.
Slow down. Slow down.
My fault.
I don't want to do this, guys. I don't want to do it.
Then
I'm
don't
not
do it.
necessarily
Don't do it. Then don't
advocating
do it.
for it.
Don't do it.
Done. Don't
But
do
you
it.
have to consider it.
No,
Lamar
consider
Jackson
what?
sitting him against
Not
the
at all.
Patriots, the best defense in all of football in just about every single category. Look, here's what I expect Bill Belichick to do: to take away the quarterback-designed run game, to take away his best option in the pass game. But Adam Rank, that still leaves one of his most dangerous areas available for him, which is improvising and scrambling.
100%. And you talked about it earlier when you were talking about this Cardinals offense, that you don't want to be scared.
That's
you
right.
want to
Don't
go
be
out
scared.
there. Don't be scared.
Don't do what
Even
I
though
just
it's
said.
Halloween. You know what, though? But you look at this board right here, and you look at the man in the zone. Belichick's going to have to mix this up. He cannot play man defense against the Baltimore Ravens, or else Lamar Jackson is going to absolutely carve them up.
Let's try to fire it up again with a little graveyard smash as each week Marcus Graham pieces together a Frankenstein's monster of a fantasy team here. Stitching together the perfect lineup for the week, Marcus. What we've created here, at least here, is a little stack here, quarterback and wide receiver duo in Detroit.
Yeah, with Stafford and Kenny Golladay going against the Raiders. I mean, Golladay had a big week last week. Stafford's been playing really well. I feel pretty confident about that.
How are you feeling about Derrick Henry down here with the Titans?
Feeling really good about Derrick Henry. I mean, he's had a surprisingly good season so far this year. A part of it is because he's been involved in the passing game. But Henry has 75 or more rushing yards and/or a touchdown in 7 of 8 games he's played this season. Now he's facing the Panthers, who've given up 10 rushing touchdowns to running backs, including four touchdowns overall last week to Tevin Coleman.
Yeah, that certainly played a big part in that stat as well. I'm also looking at Amari Cooper here. Hasn't had as hot of the last few weeks as he did earlier starts of the season. What do you think?
No, I think he's going to bounce back this week, though,
Yeah.
against the New York Football Giants on Monday Night Football. I mean, you look at the Giants, they've given up the most receiving yards, 5th most touchdowns to wide receivers. Meanwhile, Cooper himself 14 or more fantasy points in 5 of 7 games. One of the 2 games in which he didn't hit that mark, he ended up leaving early with an injury, so who knows how that game would have
Yeah, if you were wondering which secondary out there is allowing more leakage to wide receivers than the Atlanta Falcons, it's
That's the
the
one.
New York Giants.
That's it.
You
Yep.
found it there, Marcus Grant. This lineup should have a monster fantasy week for you. What if you need some more unexpected stars for Halloween weekend? Michael Fabiano has you covered.
Thanks, Rhett. And these are my Fast 5 scary good players to start in Week 9 that you might not have thought about. At number 5, Jonnu Smith. With Delaney Walker out last week, he played 73% of the offensive snaps and had nearly 20 fantasy points. And Walker has not practiced this week, so Jonnu could be in for another high target share. At number 4, Chris Connolly. He had 20 fantasy points last week. He's put up a combined 33 points over his last 2 games. Dede Westbrook is a bit banged up, and the Texans have allowed the most fantasy points to wide receivers. At number 3, Jamison Crowder. This one might be a shot in the dark, but he does lead the Jets in routes run out of the slot. The Dolphins have allowed almost 16 yards per catch and 7 touchdowns to slot receivers, and Sam Darnold throwing the ball nearly 30% of the time to his slot men. At number 2, Mark Walton. His first game without Kenyon Drake, he started for the Dolphins. He led the team in touches, in snaps, and he also saw 6 targets. He's playing Crowder's Jets this week. They've given up the 7th most fantasy points to wide receivers. And at number 1, Jalen Samuels. If James Conner cannot play this week, keep this in mind. Benny Snell just had his knee scoped. He's going to be out. If Conner can't play, Samuels is going to see the lion's share of the backfield work for the Steelers. And last year, when he played in the absence of Conner, he averaged nearly 17 fantasy points per game. So if you picked him up, start him if Conner is unable to play against the Colts. And those are my Fast 5 players who have scary good matchups that maybe you didn't think about starting.
All right, Fabs, Jalen Samuels could in fact be a treat for fantasy managers this week, but we found some guys who've been both a trick and a treat over the past few weeks. A boom or bust type of guys here. Adam Rank, Akbar Bajabiamila here to set us straight. And Rank, I'm looking at Jacoby Brissett here.
Right.
2 of the last 3 weeks, he's been under 12 fantasy points, but obviously had the big 4-touchdown game in week 7. What are we thinking this week?
You know what? I'm going to be. I mean, the trend would be just to say that he's going to go up and get in the 20s again, but I'm going to be a little bit more conservative and actually get him right around 14 fantasy points in this game. And really nothing against him. I just think that the game script is going to end up leading him to not having to throw the ball as much. You know, Pittsburgh obviously looked pretty good going up against the Miami Dolphins, but that was against the Miami Dolphins. I think that this Colts defense is going to be able to handle Mason Rudolph, so that means there's going to be more opportunity for players like Marlon Mack. So I would actually put that into that category. That's nothing against Jacoby Brissett. He's a good player. I see him throwing for about 200 yards, a pair of touchdowns, maybe an interception.
And it looks like the Steelers defense might not have to deal with T.Y. Hilton, who was limited Wednesday with a calf injury and did not practice today for the Colts, so that would not be good news for Jacoby Brissett.
Definitely not.
Looking now at Nick Chubb, who outside of the couple of turnovers actually ran for over 100 yards against the Patriots last week.
Yeah.
But what are you thinking?
He's still playing really well, and I still think that we're going to get right around there, 20 points for him in this matchup against the Denver Broncos. Again, you talk about not playing scared. I'm not scared of this matchup at all. Denver, even though they've allowed the fewest rushing yards per attempt since week 5, I still think this is a pretty good opportunity for him and the Browns to kind of get right in this game. You know, Denver's going to be starting a rookie quarterback, or an inexperienced quarterback, I should say.
Yeah.
So that's going to be a lot of opportunity, and hopefully this is a time that Cleveland's going to actually be up leading, which will give him more carries and more attempts.
Sharp point there about the rookie or not the rookie quarterback, but the young quarterback starting for Denver. Okay, looking now at Austin Eckler here, Akbar. I just long for the days where Melvin Gordon was not
In the picture?
in the picture.
And that's fair to say. But look, still, this is a top 10 running back when you look at Austin Eckler. And I know his numbers dropped last week, but this is a game where I see this number going back up. I see him getting right back to about 25 fantasy points in this game. And the one thing we know is that this offense is going to go through a little bit of a change with Ken Wisenhunt out. Anthony Lynn, the head coach, he's going to be back calling the plays. And we know that he's considered, quote unquote, the running back whisperer. And I think that he's going to utilize both Gordon and Eckler in this offense, and especially in the passing game where you're going to need to, especially against the Packers, you're going to need to get the ball moving. You're going to try to move the chain both by running the ball and then, of course, throwing it to a guy like Austin Eckler who can make things happen by running and in the passing game. He's going to get a lot of touches. I see this being a 25-point game for him.
All right, let's look at the tight end position here. Mark Andrews was one of the darlings of the fantasy season early.
Yep.
Kind of been a little bit hit or miss as of late. What are you thinking against the Patriots?
Look, I had a public school education, and I can tell you one thing. I'm not very good at calculating, but you can see the trend here. Up, down, up, down, up, down. I don't know what the average is. Where's our stats guy? Florio, come here.
Oh,
what's the average here? What is this?
Florio.
What is this?
According to my data, he has been averaging 14 points per game.
14 fantasy points a game? Okay, thank you so much. I couldn't do the
Wow,
calculation.
way to
This is too much math. This is not a math show, but this number is going to go down to about 5 fantasy points in this game.
Come on.
Going up against the Patriots. We already know what the Patriots are going to do. They are going to take away your most important threat, your biggest threat. It's Mark Andrews. You look at his numbers as far as targets, he's highly targeted every single week. He's got about 16, 17 more targets than the next wide receiver on the team. He's the top guy. The Patriots will take that away. You talked about them taking away Lamar Jackson as well.
But I talked about
this is going to be a low game for him.
I talked about Lamar Jackson crushing it. So
yeah, no, this is a 5 fantasy point game for Mark
you guys
Andrews.
are scared.